our fabulous luncheon speaker. And just as an introduction of myself, I'm Michael Battle, the Executive Vice President and Provost here at the Freedom Center. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Reverend Dr. Brook Bello. She is the author of Living Inside the Rainbow and the founding CEO and Executive Director of More to Life, Mentoring and Identity Discovery, which is an innovative social justice and anti-sexual violence organization and rescue center that provides victim services and preventative monitoring. She's a filmmaker, an ordained minister, a human rights activist. Brook and her team deals honestly, openly, and provocatively with the root causes of sexual exploitation. They're bold enough, courageous enough, and correct enough to address the issues of incest, rape, pedophilia, and the blind cultural norms that often camouflage these abuses. I'm extremely honored to present to us a woman who has spoken at the White House, has spoken nationally and internationally, and who is a deeply motivated, well-informed, scholarly, and ethically oriented speaker on these key issues. With no further ado, I introduce to you Dr. Brook Bello.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon. For just a brief moment, I want to thank those from Value Partners, Michelle and Joshua, for having me, for Brooke and all those at the Freedom Center, for President Newsom for having me here. I'd like to thank my mentor, Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner, my spiritual father, Dr. Carol A. Baltimore, one of my local pastors in Sarasota, Pastor Lumpkin, and God, of course. I have 30 minutes exactly to get through this PowerPoint and to share with you things that from my heart. What I can share with you just for a moment, briefly, is that I'm a survivor, a champion. At More to Life, we say victim to survivor, survivor to thriver, and thriver to champion. I'm a champion after domestic minor sex trafficking. Everyone loves Muhammad Ali. Everyone loves someone who got in the ring with the giant and beat him down. And that's my story, the story of many survivors, champions around the world. I was a straight A student. I was an athlete. I come from a very educated family, but my mother was a victim of domestic violence. At 11 years old, I was violently raped by a friend of my grandfather's. My best girlfriend and I ran away from home. We were not savvy. And we were taken off the streets by would-be traffickers and pimps. It was a couple that said, "We help little girls like you." I was taken back to an apartment, stripped of my clothes, beaten up, and put in a bathtub, dirty, with no water in it. I was hung over in a balcony with a razor blade to my neck, and I was injected with heroin and cocaine for the first time and beaten. And about 4 a.m., I was out on Imperial Highway in Los Angeles by the airport, being sold. And that was my life for some years. I want you to understand Scripture when it says, 1 Corinthians states, if we give all we have to the poor, even if we give our bodies to be burned and have not love, we are nothing. Scripture also states that we are walking epistles read of men. 70% of communication is nonverbal, so when broken people, lost people, children see you, what are they reading when they read you? I want to thank Mara Vanderslice Kelly as well, a powerful woman, formerly with the White House, now United Way. She's a friendly face. Thank you, Mara. Freedom. Freedom is the revelation of a life by faith that catapults us away from bondage to dwelling in the peace and liberation found in God's presence. Jesus the Christ, the Anointed One, is that presence, and in Him we live in the joy and pathway of our destiny's calling. But many of us don't make it. The realm of the ego, the spectrum of the ego, when we talk about victims of all forms of human trafficking, at Mortal Life we work with all of them. The spectrum of the ego is this. If you're narcissistic and have a lot of confidence, or if you're coming out of this type of bondage, you are broken. You don't know who you are. The spectrum of the ego is merely self-focus. And so if the enemy cannot get you to focus on all your money and all of your success, he will get you to focus on all of your brokenness. You will walk into a room and won't be able to speak, won't be able to thrive, won't be able to run into destiny because you're too afraid of how they might see you, me. I was found in a gutter with my teeth knocked out, completely in a drunken stupor. And my husband says I live halfway cute. I'm inclined to believe him. But it wasn't always the case. And so we can't think about freedom without speaking about the mind. Because it is not slave ships on crates too short for human beings, the Holocaust, but we had a hole in our soul that cost too much. It is the mind, is the battlefield. Harriet Tubman said it best, I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they only knew they were slaves. The mind. Images. We work with youth, and regardless of who you are, 85% of everything we learn in life comes through our eye gates, or our ears and our other senses if we cannot see. Perhaps the most important finding of the last decade in neuroscience, mirror neurons pave the way for understanding such diverse phenomena as the evolution of language, emotional empathy, interpersonal communication, and personal social identity and coherence. Because all communication theory and all assumptions about the way we process images and the impact they have on us. Now, Luke 10:17. Before I get into some issues and stats of our day, the 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I've given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Now, the first slide said, be phenomenal, be you, or be forgotten. But if you come out of a point in crux of bondage, the proclivities of that issue is that you don't know who you are. Every survivor I talk to, even myself, what do we want to know more than anything else? I want to know who I am. Who am I? Where am I going to go? What are the possibilities for me? And I say this, I'm going to say it later, men are the biggest part of the problem of sexual exploitation, and they will be the biggest part of the answer. Because it's about the legacy of fatherhood that is lost. Ezekiel 28 is where we actually get the word trafficking. Did you all know that? Ezekiel 28, when Jesus says, I perceive Satan fall like lightning, the prince of Tyre fell. And it said because he traded. That word trade is the word rakla. That is where we get the word trafficking from. And it means merchandising. It means taking something that is used for God's glory and placing it to be used for something else. Something dark and something evil. You all pretty much know, I'm sure, the UN Protocol for Human Trafficking. forced fraud, coercion. John said it very well earlier. Force, fraud, coercion. One of the issues we have today, if you talk about the national standard being 12, we can laugh at some of the statistics in a love to discover what they really are, because most of the girls that we work with and the young men started being raped at 3, full out, and 4 and 5 and 6. This is familial sex slavery. And it easily puts you in a position to, by the time you're 15, in a courtroom we have cases, well, on video you look like you wanted to be there. In the state of Florida, the age of consent is 18. So I really don't care if she looked like, or he looked like they wanted to be there. Something's wrong. Sex with a minor is rape. Truth to power. There's a book, a bestseller. It's called Pimpology. You can get it on Amazon. And here's what the former pimp writes. Weakness is the best trait a person can find in someone they want to control. If you can't find a weakness, you have to create one. You have to tear someone's ego down to nothing before they start looking to you for salvation. Then you have a chance to build them back up, showing them that it is your program that takes them from darkness to hope. They begin to see you as their champion, their hero, even if the weakness you rescue them from is one you created. The story eventually comes out. It usually is a similar story. I was raped as a little girl, or I was abused, and I feel real bad about myself. Law 5 in the book Pimpology, prey on the weak. Recruitment and grooming tactics. One of my favorite scriptures is train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it, right? But the brain doesn't develop till you're 25 years old, so what happens when you grow up in lasciviousness and darkness? Who will you become, and who will you, Isaiah 42:22 says, be restored. My people are locked in holes, hidden in bondage. They are a prey with none to say, be restored. Their mind. There are different types of pimps. Boyfriend pimps, which are also called Romeo pimps, guerrilla pimps, gang pimps. Boyfriend pimps, Romeo pimps, season, groom you. Psychological control, manipulation, sells the dream. Youth believes pimp is her boyfriend. We see this a lot with 13-year-old and 25-year-old boyfriends. Violence as enforcement. Guerrilla pimp, severe violence and forced drug use as primary control. We had one in the middle. Frequently kidnap youth and traffic out of the area. Gang pimps, which is a new type of pimping in our nation and around the world, and in Romania and Ukraine. Gang pimping is a newer trend. Girls often use sexually violently in a gang initiation, dual loyalty to the gang and to the boyfriend. When you see tattoos, and a friend of mine who we use at a lot of trainings, Detective Andre Dawson, and he's also a member of the FBI. These are actually real victims. It's a new type of branding. But if you see the image there in the corner, he's in jail now. His name's Cream. You'll often see a tattoo like Cream there, or iron marks on the back. Right here on the table, there's a switch called the Green Monster that he would whip and beat the girls with, mostly on your back side so that it's not visible to the public eye. And then obviously this symbol, this is a gorilla pimp symbol, which is actually very popular in hip hop culture. When we talk about victim identification, I always wanted a dad. My dad wasn't there. And I remember thinking I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be a filmmaker or a writer. And when I was standing there and taken, I thought, is one of these individuals driving by us all morning in the middle of the night gonna stop and rescue me? Because there's no such thing as child prostitution, but wouldn't we say it right? Wouldn't we say child prostitution? But there's not a such thing as child prostitution. So what do we as a people and a world have to change? Human trafficking is not just about them. It's about our own hearts searching and looking within, because it's always been here, but we missed it. And so we have to ask ourselves, why did we miss it? So that we could do better. Good, better, best, never let it rest. To my good is better, and my better is best. That's what we tell all of the girls and boys we work with. Felicia Rudd, she was misidentified, right? We trained the whole D.C. Housing Authority. And this was a huge case in Washington, D.C. Her mother was in foster care, a broken system. 65% of African American women in our nation are raped or violated. 65% of trafficked individuals or thereabouts come through foster care system. She aged out at 18. She immediately, within 2 months, conceived her daughter. They ended up in and out of shelters. So here comes Uncle So-and-so, Uncle Khalil, a janitor at the D.C. Housing Authority. Dirt poor, didn't have any money, but she had a new tablet. A week later, she got her nails done. Had 20 bucks in her pocket. He would take her away, then bring her back. Take her away, then bring her back. Predator identification, till eventually, he never came back. He shot himself, killed his wife, and we've never found the young girl who was 8. Traffickers always want to be about and around children. And there are too many beautiful, powerful, amazing men out there to not be a part of the answer and do their part. Because all she was looking for, and they were looking for, was a father figure. That's why pimps you call them daddy, right? Child sexual assault, rape, trafficking, the root causes of human trafficking. Obviously, child sexual assault in our nation, many of those issues are child trafficking, familial sex slavery, repeated rape. 1 in 5 girls in the United States, the all-American girl, is raped. 30% of reported sexual assault cases are children under 11 years old. Over 60% of those are men doing that to 11-year-old and under. Just 3% were strangers, so 3% they did not know. Percentage of rapes not reported, 54%, but 97%, if you see this statistic here, are not incarcerated. And so we have to deal with that. Are there a disproportionate number of African American men in jail for this? Not necessarily so. Are there girls who lie and say that I was raped when I wasn't? Yes, but she still has an issue with men that could be healed. But the highest percents are actual true rape cases. Military gang rapes that occur each year in our nation, 20%. 16,500 yearly, according to the Pentagon, rapes in the military, and they say that 80 to 90% are not even reported in our U.S. military. We talk about pornography. These young men, hockey players, 15, raped and had what they thought was sex with a young girl, put it on YouTube. She ended up killing herself. Here's the deal. Sex comes from the Greek word koinonia. It means to know and be known. It's intimacy and intercourse with God. It's our desire to truly know Him. This is really not sex slavery or sex trafficking. It's rape trafficking and rape slavery. Because sex is something beautiful between two people who love one another. This young boy raped his sister 50 times, sex slavery, because of Xbox and pornography. This young man would go to Africa on a mission trip with his church and was raping all of the babies. But no one identified it. No one identified him. But he would give them gifts. He always and only wanted to be with the kids and often alone. These men, and there were more than 6, gang raped an 11-year-old girl in Texas. This is Brandon Thompson, who was prosecuted by a friend of mine. The first case that Brendan Johnson, state attorney for Sioux Falls, prosecuted was that individual. And they initially said that in Sioux Falls, in North Dakota, there was no human trafficking in 2010. By 2014, they had prosecuted 25 federal cases because they just began to look. Mostly all the girls that he trafficked were under 18. This guy, Muhammad Al-Aboudi, in that particular house, girls and young women, many homeless and suffering from addiction, would frequent Al-Aboudi's residence where he provided drugs and a place to stay. And he would force them to have sex with him and other men who paid them. Al-Aboudi operated a house of horrors right in South Dakota. Pain management clients in recovery for addiction or healing from depression and anxiety are often victims or former victims. We have street outreach in Florida, and many victims of human trafficking are just homeless women. They were kids, they were brought into it, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, victims of pedophilia, rape, incest. Now they're drug-addicted women on the street with no one to say, be restored. They may not have a pimp right now, they might. They may be renegades. But one of the quotes in the book is, why burn when you can turn? Why hurt or beat up a woman who's cast off, missing teeth? Just go get a young one. And so we have to consider the homeless situation in our nation and work with homeless youth and veterans, highest growing population in our nation. Youth with babies and veteran females with children. Eric Murphy brought a strawberry shake to one of the little girls he was going to rape and pay for. Force, fraud, coercion. Timothy Gravens, age 55, only wanted girls 12 and under and had the nerve to ask, is she okay with older guys? Sexual exploitation is camouflaged in a highly sexualized society. But what do we understand that sex is? It's koinonia, it's our desire to know and be known. So it's changing the language of what it is. Another man, large, whether it's a Super Bowl, large sporting events, this is a Sturgis, which happens every year, 12 years old and under only, and they were all caught online via decoy ads. When you think of online, these two gentlemen, and they're not gentlemen, that was probably a little bit of my nerves that said that, but y'all know I didn't mean that. Andre Dawson, a friend of mine, they were busted last year. They stand trial early this year, and they would get all their girls online because over 50% of human trafficking happens online, predator behavior online. When we think about the internet, and we think that there are 2.92 billion people online, that 90 million kids have cell phones and smartphones, that YouTube, what had 200, almost 300 million users in 2010, now in the billions and climbing. Much predator behavior happens on cell phones and online. And so we have to consider internet smarts and technology to deal with the issue, and how we mentor youth who are addicted to cell phones and smartphones and tablets and technology. The number of smartphone users worldwide will surpass 2 billion in 2016, and I'm going to move quickly because I don't want to go over time. When we think about what love is, most of our kids are searching and looking to understand what love is, and this is what they get oftentimes on YouTube. These are young kids. They look really cute when you look at them, but when you think about the lyrics, we're going to look at that. You want to say, oh, doesn't he look really cute? You're going to see how the adults in the room applaud the kids. Now, the brain doesn't develop till you're 25. So what might they think about women? Now, this is a popular song, but here are some of the lyrics. Twerking happens in strip clubs, which is where pretty much all hip-hop songs are played and demonstrated to see if they'll be great. But here's their concept of love, call you my blank, right? Here's another part of the song. I'm just going to try to cut her up, try to bust a blank, trying to make somebody my blank, turn her into a slut, trying to fill my cup, trying to live it up. These are the lyrics of that song that children listen to every day. If imagery and sensory perception is how we develop who we are, then what kind of posterity of a nation are we developing? Throw some hundreds on her blank, walk her out of the club, yeah, blank, lap dance for the first date. But threw a few bands at her, which are condoms, because she's now being just used as a piece of meat. As I said, I always wanted a father. I have to say that I have a great relationship with my dad today, and Dr. Baltimore as well, my spiritual father, actually wrote the chapter on fatherhood in my book. But changing our perception of men in the fight to end sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and the healing restoration of victims. The power of words and listening. Words are a unique weapon as they have the power to cause great harm, even death, but also they possess the grace to heal wounds. Jesus is the word that became life. Sex trafficking, forced prostitution, sexual exploitation, etc. is predominantly a male issue. Men play a meaningful role in victim services and restorative justice. Prioritize male youth mentoring initiatives and fatherhood initiatives. The legacy of fatherhood in victim services and experience. Most kids say, I want a dad. I have abandonment issues, abuse issues. All I know of men is that I was violated, I was raped, I was hurt. My father had an affair. The role of demand. For every one prostituted girl, there are 7 to 10, and really sometimes 30 to 40 men who will pay to exploit her on a given night as though she's another type of girl. But she's someone's baby. She was born for greatness. So was the young man who was raped, and as an answer to a problem, and who will say, be restored. Prioritize male and female youth mentoring initiatives and fatherhood development. What can men do to help end sex trafficking and restore the lives of victims? Change the legacy of fatherhood. I will publicly say that you can be who you want to be. But when I came out of the brothel situation, I didn't know if I was gay, if I was straight. When I was little, I knew I was going to have 3 children, 2 dogs. I was getting married to a really gorgeous guy, and we were going to do amazing things. But that changed, and my mind had to be renewed over time. I'm happily married now to a beautiful man who loves me. We can't have children because of all the abuse that I suffered. A straight-A student, didn't go to a high school prom. Didn't graduate in the normal way. Finished school, but I did it later, and I'm sitting there with 18-year-olds thinking, okay. I mean, it was awesome, though. It was awesome. This is a story of victory. I am an image to look at, to not give up on any child or woman. Please understand that. It is not about me. Take the man out of demand. This is a More to Life national campaign, Turn the Tide. My last 2 slides, how do we do that? Together. I was always afraid of heights because of all that happened. I was afraid to swim. So I'm about to jump out of a plane for the first time, but I've become a master certified scuba diver. I've done all these things that I've been afraid to do, and I love birds. When you look up at starlings, you think, well, how do they do that? We're like, and they do it all at the same time. When 51% says, let's go that way. Collaboration. integration of services, people coming together. My Bible says that in unity, God commands the blessing. In unity, it is key. And my husband wrote me this little piece, and it relaxes me and calms me. I love family. And when I see you there, you may not know, but I see you as family. Our paths have crossed today for a reason. Be an answer to the problem. Have fun, because there's no victim that wants a, woe is me, tell my story, blah. They want to have fun. They want to be forward-thinking. They want to be excited about life. They want to go to Disneyland. We're taking all of our girls and our young men to Disneyland this summer for graduation. I still don't know how we're going to pay for it, but I got it covered. Family. When the midst of families, are there broken men? Yes. Are there men struggling? Yes. Be a man of honor and talk to the men who are. Mentor the young men who might be. Let's change the world together. And I always like to say, because I'm kind of an activist and I'm very involved in the African American movement, but my husband happens to be Italian. So I told my 3 brothers who are really tall, don't be mad at me, because love is love. He is an amazing worship leader. I love him to life. That's my Teddy. That's my child, but I have many children around the world. That's the book. I don't have any, but you can buy one. 100% goes to support More to Life. I'm out of time, and there's so much that I could share with you, but I just want to thank you for being here and listening. My story is a story of so many others. And I just want to say God bless you, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you.